Hello, everyone. This is Realtor Linda Peltz. Today I'm back with Hillary. Hi, good to see you again. She has a great topic that she would like to help us with. As you remember, she's an attorney, so she's a trial attorney. So she's got some good expertise she can share with us. You take it away, Hillary.
Thank you, Linda, and I thank you for inviting me back. I really enjoyed our other episodes. I was looking forward to this. Okay, today we're going to talk about family-owned businesses. And, because of the time we have today, you're not going to get every scenario and every fact pattern that's going to happen, but we're going to talk about some things you need to be aware of and things you need to look at. One, if you're married and your spouse is not involved in your business, guess what they are? If you get a divorce or one of you passes away, the spouse or you need to think about a prenup, if you're going to have one, a comprehensive estate plan as to who the beneficiaries are going to be. You also need to think about what voting rights in a particular company are going to look like. And you also need to talk about insurance and beneficiaries. I want to get into a few things. As a lawyer, I'm going to be clear to you. If you all go to a lawyer, the lawyer's going to tell you conflict of interest, no. Each of you should have your own lawyer. It doesn't mean it's going to be combative. Maybe you have a family lawyer who does prenups and estate plans and can advise you. But just because you're in love now, things change. I'm pro-marriage if it's a good marriage. I am not
Well, what
pro-marriage.
do they say? Fine line between love and hate.
Exactly. And exactly. Things change. We're seeing a huge rise in the gray divorce right now because people are living longer, things like this. If you have a company of any kind, say you're running it with your brother, you and your grandfather started, your father started it, and it's going to be passed down to two kids. You would be surprised at the animosity and the expectations and hurt feelings and resentments that build up over years and years and years. Maybe you were dad's favorite. Maybe you were, maybe you were the one who had the better education, the better job, so you're in charge. Maybe one sibling is chosen to be the president and make decisions. And maybe there is a group meeting, but maybe it's really not a meeting because you're there just to do whatever. You need to think about a lot of things if you're going to be a part, and I'm going to discuss today a part owner in a family-run business. I don't care if you started it with someone. It could be your brother, your sister, your father, your grandfather, your grandmother, or a cousin. I don't know. Or if you're a married couple, there obviously are different rules. Okay, one, your spouse, if you're married in the state of California, has an absolute right to part of that. Part of
What
that.
about, because I've run into this one personally, what about if they're just living together and they decide to start a business? I have literally refused to help them until they go get a business agreement done up by an attorney.
And absolutely should. Just because you're not married doesn't mean the person doesn't have rights. There's a
Mm,
thing called a Marvin action in the state of California, and I've tried several of those, which means it's called a putative spouse. So you're living together, you're working together, and you're functioning like a spouse. The other issue is what is that boyfriend or girlfriend or partner contributing? They may be contributing intellectual property, business ideas, contacts, depending on what kind of business. Say you have a real estate business and they're referring all this business to you so you can build new homes or you can purchase, buy and sell new properties. Things don't work out, they're going to say, hey, I referred 80% of your business to you. I was the one hustling. I was advertising for you. I helped you with your website. I was doing the newsletter and the social media, all the things. I came up with your logo and your tagline because the tagline does help, in certain situations.
right, definitely.
Your brand is a big deal. Say your partner, didn't work there and wasn't actually going out and selling homes or helping build them, buying and selling, building and selling or flips, but they were very, very involved. And there were employee issues or whatever. They're very involved. They're going to say, look, I put in a lot of uncompensated time here. 15 years later, this doesn't work out. And we started with $50,000 and now this is worth 1.5 million. That's your half. I want part of that. I helped you build this. Your contact database and your logo, your website, your advertising, your marketing strategies. I devoted it and developed all of that. Who's to say in the contacts you have, most of the sales to people I know. And that's what they're going to say. you need to have a written agreement with your business partner and with your partner. So they may be the same person. If they're the same person, you're going to have them written down saying, this person is contributing capital. And you'll say, well, I gave the startup money. I'm the one who paid. Yeah, but you didn't do a lot of the extra work. You were the face. I did the work. This happens all the time. You need to have these agreements in place. You also need to know what happens if that person dies. Because
Mm,
God
good
forbid,
one.
married or not, your partner, your business partner, or relative, whoever it is, God forbid, gets hit by a car accident and passes away. Their estate plan, whether they have one or not, is going to have heirs. And so you need to have a series, and it's their right to devise their share to anybody they like. So all of a sudden you've got, Billy Bob, who's super, and you love working with him, and his wife is on board and she signed documents saying that's his. I'm going to give it to him. I'm not going to interfere. But Billy Bob and his wife, Sally Sue, die in a car accident. And now Aunt Kelly is, the only living heir. Billy Bob's sister, who is a very different person and has very different ideas, and all of his estate went to her, or his children, or his cousins. They may have no
Mhm.
experience. They may be entitled brats. They may have a very different idea. Lots of people come in with ideas about how a business should work, and that doesn't mean it is. I can guarantee you, for every company, there are a lot of other people saying, "Oh no, you're not going to do it that way. Do it this way." There's always someone like that.
Right. And another thing I've seen is kids taking over parents' businesses. I mean, they worked hard, they grew it to this, and then they hand it off to the kid, and it just gets run right into the ground. So
It's run right into the ground, gets sued. You get hear a lot of this, or the child may not have developed their own professional life in their own right. This is a very common thing where the person goes, "Look, you're going to inherit this," and they know it. So they do some things and they're looking forward to it, but they're not really prepared for it. Whereas someone has been toiling away weekly, the other partner's going to go, "Hey, what do you even know anything about running a business?" Because it's a
yeah,
lot. It's a lot to run a business,
it
and
is.
it's a lot different from being an employee, and it doesn't run itself. And if you're running a small, look, there are always issues coming up. It's not ever going to stop. So you may not be the 9 to 5 job, they may not have the skill set. There could be a significant personality conflict between some of these. Maybe the surviving partner likes the way things are, and it's like, hey, this is fed and clothed my family for years. I don't care. I'm going to keep doing this. The other one says, no, we want to bring it into the future. We've got to do this, and our ads are stale. We don't want to do this. You need to have a system in place in your agreement how this is going to be handled. And it is probably a good idea, if you have a statement, again, a business agreement does not legally bind an heir. So if you have a child, or the son or daughter who's going to take over your share of the business someday, an agreement between you and your business partner does not legally bind them. So what you
Well,
may want
that's
to do,
interesting.
is, have them say, maybe put some terms and conditions in that trust. Maybe put some terms and conditions in it. But on the other hand, what if your partner becomes an alcoholic? What if you've been happily married for 50, 60 years and your other partner is gone through 3 marriages, maybe needs more money, maybe has a view of cash flow issues, so is doing turnover quickly to get more deals, when they are cash strapped, or maybe they want those things. Maybe one of them's developed a drinking problem or addiction or has become ill. There needs to be ways to do this. So having a dissolution plan, or how you're gonna part ways, it is important in these. You can have buyouts, you can have a vote out, how that's going to work. What about voting rights? Who really owns the company? What about the assets? It is critical when you're going through a small business to observe corporate formalities. And so what I would say is you're going to have resolutions and agreements. Don't just say, okay, we're going to do this and start doing it. I see this all the time. I don't know. We just started doing it. And then years later, when you have to fix this mess, you're going, well, why did such and such start getting paid that? I don't know. He wanted to be paid more, so we just started paying. It was like a bonus or whatever. Well,
Oh my goodness.
is
I
that
can only imagine what you have to untangle with some of
Oh,
this
it
stuff.
is. And we don't have any meeting minutes because we didn't really have meetings. Do you have a minute book? No. Did you have an attorney oversee this? No. Anybody advising? No, we didn't really want to incur the cost. Okay. Do you have a CPA who helps you? No. Okay. who's handling your paperwork? Please tell me it's digitized. No, did you keep it? No, we didn't really do that either. So you're sitting here going, okay, what do you want me to do? And so there could be things that are going on for years, oral agreements that people have relied on. It can be a real mess. Get it in writing, do it formally, make sure you have an agreement. It's hard to run a business, and you also should have an exit plan and saying, look, if things don't work out, this is how it's going to go. Someone could say, look, I own all the trucks that transport everything, all the materials to the sites. You can't sell the property if the loans are in my name only, and say some are paid off, some are not. I should own them because I paid them. Is a partner going to be an employee as well? This is another issue here. How are you getting paid? Are you a partner and you share the profits? Are you an employee? Are you both? How is that going to look? And what is that going to look like? So you have to have these agreements. You should have an attorney at a minimum to consult who has a strong working knowledge of your industry, whatever industry that is, real estate or business law, and just understands the formalities and things like that, including formations. And you should also have somebody who has some understanding of the employment laws, because a partner can be an employee.
So what would be, so when they go to look for an attorney to set up their business, is there a specific type of attorney that they need to look for? A business attorney, I mean, what do they call those types of attorneys that can
It's
help
called
them?
a business attorney, but a business attorney should have a good working and practical knowledge of formations, LLCs, things like that. An attorney may tell you, what should I do? An LLC, a C corp, an S corp. Likely you're going to hear, which is a good answer, is that you should talk to your accountant about how that's going to look for your taxes, and they can explain the differences to you. But you should have one that understands, formations, formalities, and those agreements, and has experience in partnership or other. You should also get an attorney who has a good working knowledge and experience with employment law, because otherwise you're just going to wind up with 3 or 4 different attorneys. Say you have an issue with an employee, you're going to have to call someone else. That's far better. You also need to be clear when your company, who the client is. If your company hires an attorney to help you form it, the company has hired them. They are not your personal attorney. I want to be clear about that. Okay, there are
No, that's a
rules.
good point.
There are rules against it for conflict of interest. So this happens a lot. Like the corporation's attorney will call some partner or somebody and they'll say, oh, well, you're my attorney too. No, I'm not. We've had to do this. I want to be clear to you. Anything I'm saying to you is advocacy and negotiations on behalf of the company. If we can't give you legal advice, so if you need legal advice, go to your own separate attorney. So I do advise you, if you get an attorney, you should have your own attorney. Most people in business should. You should also have a good accountant, and I really recommend a good real estate, a good insurance broker. Good real estate brokers too good too, though.
Yeah.
But they need to be able to advise you about what kind of insurance you need. So again, who's the beneficiary on the policy? Who's going to ultimately be responsible for that? Who's signing on these agreements and things like that? Make sure that do both of you have access to bank accounts? There's a myriad of ways that issues can come up. Most important thing is you have the same goals. If you do with your agreement, how things are going to be run, how a company is going to be run. If you don't have the same goals, it's going to be a real problem for you. It is. And I've seen these things. Do you get on with trust this person? Because if you don't, you're going to find out real quickly. Or there may be limits to that. I have seen partnerships where they don't see each other that much. They just do their taxes and divide up the profits at the end of the year. And that works if you want to do that. It's not the most pleasant way to do it, but you can. It's often happened. Your best case scenario is someone you like and trust, that you get on with. And so even if it doesn't work out, you can maintain a professional relationship. Partnerships don't work out all the time. And business.
Well, I think from my experience, partnerships in anything, whether it be business or personal or marriage or boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever type of partnership it is, people change. They're not the same person that maybe you met 10 years ago or 15 years ago, or like you say, maybe sometimes, addictions kind of creep in that they didn't have when you first started this, or
A
I see that
relationship
all the time.
relationship.
Relationship in general.
If
Yeah.
and I will say this is the big one. The big ones are addiction, substance abuse, mental illness. and divorce, as well as if someone gets involved with someone who's got an issue. So if you have a partner who's got, I'm not gonna say nuts, but a crazy spouse or partner, you're in for some real trouble there. Like you're in for a rough road ahead.
Even if they are okay, that stuff still filters into whatever
It's
your
almost,
partnership.
I have never seen a situation where it doesn't spill over into the office. You're having problems at home, it is going to come into the business. And if you have a controlling spouse who calls all the time, or wants things, or is a spender, or has an addiction or mental health issue, and I've seen this time and time again where the person, because they've got your partner is your business partner now has their hands full and then some, keeping this person under control, keeping up appearances. But again, sooner or later, it is going to spill over into the office. Whether you can manage that and you're okay with that is a different issue. If you're making billions of dollars, you're probably going to suck it up and deal with it. But, there are also issues of liability, how that's going to, but I do see this very often where people change. I've seen this happen where people are under such severe stress at home that their behavior changes, that they start to adapt their behaviors to whatever's going on at home, and trying to manage both, so they're living in two worlds, and that is tough to do. You may all there are any number of ways you come up, but those are the main ones. I would say addiction, any kind of addiction, mental illness, financial difficulties, which could or could not be caused by gambling or this reckless spending, or problems at home. Those are a major illness, things like that too. Life changes, there are a lot of things that can go on. But I will say, if there are problems at home, you need to look very carefully at that if you're going to go into business with someone. So I know the person you're doing business with may mean well. They may really think that they can handle it, and there's nothing. Oh well, I've just seen it so many times that it's happened, and it's. I would
So,
also say
say
one thing.
if somebody got a hold of you and said, we're thinking about starting a company, what is there like a standard, I don't know, questions that you would ask them as the attorney, or is it kind of depending on what type of company they have? So you have like a series of questions that you would ask them, trying to nail it down. So, because
I
you do
do.
want to cover all this stuff, but my gosh, that's a big job, Hillary. How do you cover all that in the beginning?
We have lists, and then one we start. What's your company for? What do you want to do? What are your goals? Have you talked about form? And this is your partner. Have you talked about how things are going to work between who's going to have ultimate decision making authority, tiebreakers, sharing profits, holding assets? And we have a list of things that we go through, and most attorneys do and provide them and say, have you thought about all this? If they haven't, that's what we do. And the companies that have problems like this and don't talk them out and don't work them out are the ones who usually leave themselves open for a lawsuit or something like that, because one doesn't know what the other's doing. You can't overplan everything, and you can't micromanage everything. But if you leave it all to chance, chances are it won't work out. The universe is good, but the universe does not provide for everybody. There's not a miracle waiting out there for you. You think
Mm.
that, I'm not saying it doesn't ever happen, but if you think that, it's different. I see people who are so eager to get started that they'll agree to things, and why would you ever think this was going to work out? And but then again, I've seen some real screwball things work out really well. And it's often, the fighting is often about money and assets and who's entitled to what. If the company fails, they're going to want to blame each other. If the company makes more money, each one's likely going to think, if it doesn't work out, that I'm entitled to more, or their spouse or partner or family member is going to think. So you need to think these things through and discuss it with them. Don't forget the intellectual property aspect of it, the marketing, the sweat equity. Okay, how is that sweat equity going to be compensated? Because one could say, I did 80% of the work here. You did very little. Okay, so how is that fair that I'm getting? Because that does contribute towards the value of property. Say you build up a company and you sell it, and part of it is your contact base and your client base. One person did all the work and is hustling and going to the networking events and getting all those things, and has a steady referral source that you can track, makes this much money a year, and this one makes this much money a year. And you have some big clients thanks to you, thanks to partner X whining and dining customer Y, there are ways to do that. So you need to think about those things. And there's also the problem with, well, I'll just go somewhere else. It's California. I can go somewhere else and all those people will come with me. And then what do you get out? So I
Yeah.
think you need to think about those things. And I think it's upfront. It's kind of like a prenup in a way. And now
Yeah, that's what it
loosely.
kind of, and I think that's kind of important in marriages at this point in life too, but definitely when there's a business involved.
You need to discuss how this is going to be handled and what that's going to mean and how that's going to, and look, I've seen people keep it very fluid and loose and it works out, and you can, if you have a good working relationship with people, it's like anything else in life, you can navigate almost anything. You don't, and there's other problems, or one spouse or one partner wants to hold on. I mean, it's the other marriage, right?
Yeah,
Business partner is the other marriage. So you need to think about that very carefully. And is this someone you want to see day in and day out and be dealing with? You really need to think about it. On the other hand, if you have a great idea and business is going well and you just want to get the business up and running, maybe that's something you want to do and try it for a few years. But, this is how a lot of people make their living. Some people, it's an additional investment. But when people start to fight about money, that's when the real problems begin, whether there's not enough or there's too much. Not too
that's
much,
very
but just
true.
a
Money,
lot of it.
money causes a lot of problems. You're right.
It does, and there's often someone who thinks that there's more into it, but I think you need to think very seriously if this person has a long history of unstable relationships, of being unreasonable. Maybe one of them has never really worked before. Sometimes traditionally there are women, but that are supported by other people. There is marriage profiteering, which we've seen, or someone has a divorce or two under their belt and's gotten a house in retirement. They never really worked. They did, but it's for fun. It's you need to make sure these people have, again, no one's just like anybody else, but you have strong goals in mind that you're going to do. But then companies go on for decades, hundreds of years even. So it's very doable. I'm not trying to make it sound all dismal, but I think you have to have, you should like and trust the person, and know them.
But that's where it goes into what to do if you do die. Maybe it has worked your whole life, but then all of a sudden you die, and you still have this business partner. I think that's what you're kind of saying is, well, then you better prepare the next generation and figure out what you're doing
Or
with
or
that.
there's a buyout option for the partner, the remaining partner. Say one falls
Mhm.
ill and God forbid, dies of cancer or something awful or gets into a car accident, they should maybe consider it for a buyout provision. But again, I've seen businesses run very well, but when they change hands for generationally, I see issues there. People may have different views. Maybe it did work for 50 years for one person, but it doesn't work now in today's environment. Maybe there's an offer to sell this business. People have different views on that. So I think that needs to be discussed, how that's going to.
Is that built right in the dissolution? Um, say the father dies, the son takes it over, but the partner's super unhappy with how it's being run by the son. Is that actually built into it when you do them as far as,
It can be put into a trust. I'm not a trust and estate planning attorney. I know there's some provisions you can make, but you can also say upon the death of one of the partners, that partner has the option to buy out the estate. However, there are certain waivers that need to be in place. My partner would be better able to describe that for you. But an estate planning attorney who can correctly advise you on what your rights are and what would need to be signed. There are instances where you can say upon the incapacitate or death or illness of a particular, the other partner, the one has the ability to buy the other out, assuming they're able to. Assuming they're able to.
isn't
That's
that interesting? That is so much to think about.
it
Is that
is. But
is that how attorneys' minds work?
it is some, yeah. I mean, part of our job is to get the deal done. Don't do a cocktail napkin. We've all heard of that. We'll just do a little scribble. It's not going to be enforceable. And also, I think you do need to think about those things, and you do need to think about what could go wrong because it's preventative. It hasn't happened yet. Let's talk about it now because it's much more likely to happen if you haven't thought about it.
Hmm.
You now want to hear later, oh, I didn't really think about all that stuff. And oh, I didn't, I want this. And or to go into business with someone and find out they had a totally different view on what you wanted. They wanted as opposed to what you wanted. So they're difficult conversations to have, but they're worth having. If you don't have these conversations, it's not gonna, it more likely than not, it won't go well. You can't just leave it up to luck.
No, it doesn't sound like it. And if you're married and your wife's helping you in the business, for all
Mhm.
intents purposes, she's a business partner. You guys need to
Or
get
an
your business
employee,
agreement
or an
or an
employee.
employee, but you need to get that figured out because what, so now you're looking at kind of dual, okay, you end up divorced, what's going to happen to your business on top of all that? So,
Right,
wow.
exactly, exactly. And say, look, you guys promised me all this, so it's not being in half, it's third. Third's mine now, And you have the vindictive spouse, right? You have those people, the vindictive business partner, or maybe there's a perception that one's doing better than the other, or jealousy or irrational behavior. So usually when partners split, one's not happy, or both.
Yeah.
And there's a reason for it. You don't always, and it may not always be about business.
That's
You know,
that's so true. That's so
so,
true. I mean, they wouldn't be splitting if there wasn't some unhappy somewhere.
yeah, exactly. And people have different views. Maybe one thinks, oh, your spouse should stay at home and raise kids, or maybe one thinks you should be doing this, or I didn't like the way who you decided to vote for in the last election. Or I don't agree with how you handled that call at the softball or football game, and you're taking sides with this, or our kids don't get your kids hanging out with people I don't like. That all comes in to a business. So, but what I have seen is also many people lie, will shut up if the money's good and just keep that going. And then it doesn't change until someone passes away. I've seen that a lot. Or a divorce. Then you realize, oh, that's what you meant the whole time. I mean, and you see these clients going, I had no idea that's what they intended to do. So again, if money's not good, you're going to hear about it. If the money's good, people are going to tell you what you want to hear. So again, I would advise anyone in their own business to have their own private attorney. You don't have to call them all the time and just ask them questions about what you need to do. And the company should have an attorney. If someone advising them,
There a program out there that's within the attorney community that maybe, I don't know, you hire this attorney to set your business up? Is it like a checkup? Is there like a checkup system within you guys that
there
would come
is. We
in
offer
and
that. We offer. I know what you're saying. We offer that to Quincy. Would you like us to remind you annually of things and things? We give that option. Some clients
okay.
say no. They don't want to do that. They don't want to write them and say, okay, you told us that you'll contact us. You don't want our assistance any further. We formed a company for you. We got some agreements. You're going to be responsible. We advise you to we advise you to have annual meetings and do these things, but you're asked us not to be involved in that. Because they don't want to spend the money. A lot of
Uh,
people view a lawyer as an unnecessary additional expense, and unfortunately, that's how it goes sometimes.
I
So,
don't think people that go into business for themselves don't necessarily think, they just think, oh, I'm gonna get wealthy. They don't always think they see the expense that comes with running the business,
they
and
don't.
that you're only going to be making whatever you make minus your expenses, which could be 50%, 20, you may be only making 25% of what you actually make
You
in
eat
these
what
small
you kill,
businesses.
and you eat what you kill, and you get what you keep. That's the deal there.
Hmm. I had this discussion with one of my contractors. They're good at their trade, but not necessarily great at their business, right? So they
Happens a
go out
lot.
on business thinking they're going to make more money, and um, we kind of chuckle on, yeah, because employees get kind of a big head. Oh, I'm this good, I'm that good, I deserve more money, and it's like, you're the business owner, you make all this money. And we got into this discussion one day. He says, you know how many weeks I went without a paycheck because I had to cover everything. So
Yeah, welcome to the world of business. So, look, you can't catch a pass if there's not a quarterback to throw it to you.
exactly,
And,
exactly.
and sometimes as much as someone hates it, maybe that person who's sitting on them all day and saying, hey, you need to do this and this is motivating them. I mean, there are different kinds of employees. Some employees just want to do the work. In
Hmm.
our profession, some employees don't want to be dealing with all that. stuff. They just want to do this and this, and they want to go home and they want to collect their paycheck and they don't want any real responsibility. People are different that way, but people need to be very realistic about this and what they can and can't do. Because if they can't, they need to know that about themselves up front. And I think, but I do see some employees that go out on their own and really do well. You need to have people helping you. No one runs a business alone. They just don't. I mean, there's always people in the background helping. And I think that's critical. But again,
I
careful
think
about
there's a
being,
place for all of us in this world. It's just we have to find it out. And if you're
that's
thinking
right.
about starting a business, Hillary would be a good call and kind of get the lowdown on things to think about seriously before you probably even come over to the attorney and start the corporate documents and a few things.
I would be happy to. And if you mentioned that you're on Miss Help Me on Linda's podcast, there's no charge for the consult. So please
Oh,
be
well,
sure
that's a
to.
wonderful benefit right there. Why
And
don't you
yeah,
give us some contact information?
sure. Number is 310-492-4009. And my email is Hillary, 2 L's, at hillarytriallawyers.com, or you can hjohnsesq@gmail.com and mention that you saw me on Linda's podcast. Okay.
And everybody, make sure you hit the like button so that you keep getting all this wonderful information. Hillary, you're always a joy. I hope you decide to come back and give us some more tidbits on things to look out for.
Love it. Thank you.
Everybody have a wonderful day. I will catch you on the next one, and we will hopefully convince Hillary to come back again.
I accept. Thank you. Thank you for having me, Linda. This was fun. I'm
It
glad.
is. You're always a joy. You're always a joy. My license number is 01997670, and we will catch you on the next one.